Hello and happy Monday to all of you. Not sure how many will tune in today for the live stream. It's sort of an impromptu live stream at a weird time. But I do want to thank you for joining me. Or if you're listening on the replay, that's awesome too. I am Krista Bontrager. I'm a Christian theologian and public apologist, and this is the channel where I offer teaching and theological commentary on social issues. Usually I do this wearing makeup, but I forgot my makeup at home today. As most of you know, I've been hard at work on my dissertation. Yesterday, I felt like I took a very wrong turn on the whole thing. I'm feeling a little discouraged today, but I still tried to get a few hours of work in this morning. And over my lunch break, I wanted to take some time to do kind of an unscripted live stream on a couple of topics. And, mostly because I'm trying to do some occasional content, even though the podcast is really sort of officially on hiatus right now. I'm not taking time to write shows because I just am trying to focus on my dissertation. And so this is going to be a little bit more of a spontaneous stream. I don't want the algorithm to forget about my existence. So I am trying to do some occasional content here and there as I am able. But if you are watching, and I'd love it if you put a note in the chat, let me know that you're watching. That'd be awesome. And let's see. This is going to be just sort of me kind of sharing a few thoughts, more of a freestyle show. So if you have other questions you want me to address as I'm doing the stream, that'd be great. But I read the book. I read Megan's book last week. I'm calling it the book that broke Christian Twitter or X. Her book, Shepherds for Sale. And boy, it's made a lot of people mad, like big mad. And there's a whole debate about happening on X about whether or not her concerns, or mostly like vetting her footnotes. I've never seen such an obsession with footnotes, but yeah, I think people are trying to wrestle with her thesis or seeing, what's there. And so I just thought that maybe I would offer a few of my own thoughts. We had her on the show on Saturday night, and I was kind of waiting for that to happen before I offered any specific comments. But I'd love to hear your comments. Put them in the chat. Natalie's getting us rolling here. She says, the funny thing is, no one is actually disputing all the terrible things that she's actually talking about. That is a little peculiar. It's been it's a lot of footnote vetting. So yeah, Jennifer says Megan poked the hornet's nest or something. I'm enjoying the book. The book, not the I guess the nest, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, not the nest. So yeah. All right. So here's a few of my thoughts. First of all, I think that, and these are sort of some big picture comments. This isn't intended to be a full review. But one of the things I noticed is that going into the book, I was kind of already sort of on Megan's side. So I'll admit my bias, because I have found her reporting on Francis Collins and on COVID issues to be personally helpful to me. She was pointing out some things that I had also noticed. And it was nice to hear someone else making some of the same points that I had been thinking. I hadn't been public with all of my thoughts. I don't make every thought I have on cultural issues public. I definitely pick and choose, but I went into the book with a bias toward her reporting, because the reporting that I had seen previously resonated with me. Her research seemed true. The way that she was putting things into words largely reflected my thoughts and experiences and research as well. So I'm just admitting my bias about the book up front. I was excited about the book and looking forward to seeing more of her research and what she came up with. There are 3 chapters in the book that cover topics that I have researched independently of Megan, not using Megan as a source in any way, but covers topics that I have researched with some amount of depth on my own, finding my own data, making my own analysis. And those 3 chapters, the one was on the pro-life chapter and the redefinition of pro-life, which is still a stream I would like to do at some point when we either resume my podcast or maybe on a family meeting. The issue of Andy Stanley and the LGBT concerns coming into the church. I did a whole thing about that a year or 2 ago on my channel. And I think I was one of the first, if not the first, to report on that issue. The third thing was on critical race theory and how some of that ideology has come into some churches and into some of our Christian institutions. So I have not looked into detail in all of the issues that Megan lays out in the book. But in 3 of them, I have looked into it with more detail. So what I did as part of my process is when I was reading the chapter, I started checking out and kind of spot checking some of the footnotes. And I mean, some of them were like, well, I don't know, does this really say that all the way? But then in the larger context, and if I looked up other public receipts, like the case is there. So, even though some of her footnotes might go beyond or might not, the text might go a little bit beyond her footnotes. Like some things, maybe she could have put 4 or 5 footnotes, but she has a lot and everybody has access to Google. And in the 3 chapters that I was looking at, I was like, I generally agree with these claims. These seem backed up and consistent with my own research. Now, again, I have not vetted each and every footnote in her book because there are probably hundreds. But the ones that I have spot checked, and in general in the 3 chapters where I felt like I had more of an operating knowledge, I generally came to the same conclusions that she did. Now, we could debate some of the finer details and could she have worded things in a more gracious way or a more general way or been more clear here or there. We can debate all of those issues. I'm sure people, when our book comes out, are going to have like picky things that they wish that we had said a little bit differently. Okay, that's likely to happen. That's all part of the nature of writing a book. But in general, I would say that her points have been my concern as well and are borne out in the hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of correspondence that we have received at the ministry over the last 4 years. But that leads me to my third point, and that is that what I've noticed, especially in the early days of kind of last week, the book dropped on Tuesday to my Kindle, there were a lot of people on social media who had very strong opinions about the book, but they hadn't actually even read the book. And I find that a little weird. Like sometimes I'll have a strong opinion about a book, but if I haven't read the book, I don't generally say that in public. I keep those comments like to my friends or my family, but I don't generally go on social media and pound that out to thousands of people. I usually try to do my due diligence. That's not to say I do it perfectly all the time, but it was just peculiar to me as to how many people had such strong feelings about the book and they hadn't even really read the book. So yeah, that's been weird. And so there's a question here is, having not read the book, what are the basic claims? The basic claims of the book and why she wrote the book. This is a great question. I'm glad you asked this. Is that a lot of historically conservative churches and institutions have been penetrated or shifted a little bit to the left by ideology that maybe is somewhat progressive adjacent, critical race theory adjacent. And she is trying to, in some cases, make a case for how money has come in and infiltrated some of these institutions without us realizing it, progressive money. But that's not in every institution. But I think that maybe, what she's really trying to do is, I think that book titling is a very tricky thing. I don't know if Megan picked the title Shepherds for Sale or if that was something her publisher did. It's a very good title. It's a very provocative title. I think the downside of the title is that it makes it kind of sound like each and every person in the book has taken this money from progressive organizations. It's not actually what she's arguing. But she is concerned that there are leaders in evangelical schools and institutions and churches who have either brought in materials that were funded by progressive leftist organizations and or maybe unwittingly adopted certain language of progressives and incorporated that into their sermons and their pulpit, and they might not even be aware of it. So I think that let me just give a personal example here. Probably before Monique came to live with us, so this would have had to have been like 2016, 2017. I had heard the term social justice a lot. And I thought, oh, that's a good term. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And so I had started using that term. I don't think I have any videos where I use that term, but in my conversations in my everyday life, I had started kind of using that terminology. Did I have any idea in 2017 what ideology lay behind the term social justice? I had no idea. I had no clue. So was I a shepherd for sale? Well, no, I didn't accept any money, but this vocabulary was just used so frequently that I found myself also using it. Certain ideas of when I used to be more leaning toward egalitarianism, I would adopt vocabulary unknowing of all the ideology behind it. And I think that many pastors who maybe are advancing some of the ideas that Megan is explaining in the book, I don't think is part of her case that each and every pastor has taken money. What she's trying to point out, though, is that there's a spectrum of problems here. And one of them is that money has, to some degree, shaped how we talk about things, curriculums that are written that are designed to come into evangelical churches and to train us how to talk and what vocabulary to use and what are the accepted things to say and not say. This is her issue. Okay. So she's not saying that each and every person mentioned in the book is a shepherd for sale. Again, it's a provocative title. I should have asked her, like, if she chose the title or the publisher did. Like my friend Ken Samples, one of my favorite books by him is a book Without a Doubt. It's a very provocative title. I think the publisher chose that. And, it's like, oh, does this book answer each and every doubt so that no one will have a doubt? Well, no. I mean, book publishers are in the business of selling books. They want a provocative title. Without a Doubt was a strong title. Shepherds for Sale is a strong title. It's going to sell books. That's what they're in the business of doing. Okay. It doesn't mean that each and every person is for sale in the book. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Let's see. The fourth thought that I have is the best way to judge what's happening is to read the book. Like, seriously, make up your own mind. I said this on the podcast on Saturday night. It's a biblical concept to try to weigh something fairly, to investigate, to do it as much as you can impartially, or just to at least be aware of your biases going into it, like I talked about a few minutes ago. But the best thing to do is not go by the reviews. If you're curious, just read the book. And if somebody comes to you with a whole bunch of concerns, ask them if they've read the book. Because that's really the best, and I think, in my candid opinion, the most biblical way of judging the content is to read the book. I think that the interactions that Megan presents, this is my fifth point, by the way, the interactions that Megan presents at the beginning of each chapter, to me, feel very consistent and authentic with many of the letters that Monique and I have received over the last 4 years. I really appreciated the stories that she shared, and I mentioned that in the stream that we did on Saturday night on all the things with her, because to me, this is not a conversation about just politics or trying to stir up trouble or being just being a provocateur of dissension. I don't think that's Megan's intention. Her stories at the beginning of each chapter show that bad theology and bad ideas impact people's lives, and that there can be very real damage that can be done to people's lives. And she's trying to show how that shows up. And her reports, I'll say, in the part of the chapters, it feels very consistent with the letters that we have received at the ministry. So I think that I appreciated that component of the book. I was glad that she included those personal stories. Just a few more thoughts. And what this book, I think this is my sixth thought, is this book, if you follow our content pretty closely, there's very little in this book that is going to shock you. Like, a lot of the things that Megan is bringing up are things that Monique and I have been bringing up for 4 years. And it seems like what Megan has done is just sort of collated a lot of tweets and blog posts and podcasts and books and videos and kind of pulled them all together to tell a narrative. And you can weigh out by reading the book yourself whether she succeeds, whether there's enough evidence for her to support the story that she's trying to tell. She's trying to tell a story that she is concerned that money has had a negative impact in many evangelical churches. She focuses a lot on the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, I'm not a Southern Baptist, so I don't know all of the ins and outs of all of those policies, but I believe she is a Southern Baptist, so maybe that's an issue of particular concern for her. But she is trying to sound the alarm about what she sees as a problem, that money, in some cases, and in some cases just bad ideas, are coming in and reshaping conversations about certain cultural issues in a way that, like, if you don't buy into those ideologies, you're left out of the conversation. And so that's a very bad version of it, but that's kind of what I think she's trying to do. And she's trying to just bring all those kind of breadcrumbs together and put it into a coherent book and a story. A couple of things that I would love to see in future books or future articles. I know she's up against word counts, and so every book can't like have everything in it. I wish she had included some investigation, or maybe she could do some future articles about this, about people on the right also taking money and resulting in distortions in their public teaching and advocacy. Now, again, I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback her. I totally understand word count issues. People are going to raise issues in our book that we have coming out in October. You can go pre-order Walking in Unity right now on Amazon. But, you know, I think that for some people, it could have broadened the audience if she had included at least a few examples of how this has worked on the right. It wasn't her project. She was looking for progressives and progressive adjacent people and people that she felt like were really more left leaning, left of center Christians. But I think that the book would have opened up the audience a little bit more if she had included some problematic issues on the right and and made it seem more, I hate the word balanced, but just more impartial, maybe. So yeah, that's sorry, I'm reading the comments here. All right, I'm going to get to a few of those. I'm going to make one more point here. I'll get to some comments. Finally, and I'm going to expand this more in the second half of this stream, but you're going to see, if you go on Twitter, you'll see a lot of people like defending Megan, a lot of people coming after Megan. And I think here's my theory of what's going on. This isn't like I wouldn't die for this, but this is a thought that I've had, and you can try it on and you can reject it, and that's totally fine. It's just an opinion. But I think that there is a certain symbolic appeal to the book, Shepherds for Sale, because those who read it and largely agree with her, these tend to also be people who have experienced some aspect of what the book talks about. You know, maybe back in 2020 or 2021, they've had experiences that are similar to what Megan outlines in the book. And whether it's race issues coming into their church, or progressive creep coming into their church, or being told by their pastor that in order to love their neighbor, they have to get certain bodily, I don't know what to call it, medical things. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. That there is a certain group of these people that feel like there's nobody speaking up for them. Nobody is saying your experiences are real. What you saw is what you saw. And just as a recent example, like the whole Olympic Games having the drag queens reenact the Last Supper. Well, by the next day, we were all being gaslit and saying, oh, no, it's not the Last Supper. And people are telling us that our eyes are lying to us. I think the people that the book is going to appeal to are people who have had experiences like what Megan is talking about. And they're going to feel like, finally, I'm not being gaslit. I'm having somebody who has a platform, who is saying what I saw was real. My pain is real. And the more you tell those people that you are not buying the case because you're looking at the footnotes and vetting them, and even though we can have the conversation about that issue, the more that those people are going to just double down and support the book, because they find Megan's transparency refreshing. They feel like there is a voice who is saying out loud in public and not backing down that what they experienced during the pandemic or what they experienced in their church really happened. And these people are probably going to be more forgiving about small errors in the book, or its perceived shortfalls, because they are simply tired of being told by what they perceive to be evangelical elites, which might include their pastor, um, that their pain isn't real, they're imagining it, and they're conspiracy theorists. I think that that is the appeal of the book. And I think that that's why a lot of people really honestly won't care about all the details, because they're going to say, no, this happened. This is real. I lived this. This, I saw this. And it impacted my family this way. We lost our church. We lost our kid. We, any number of scenarios. So, I think that that's who the book is going to appeal to. All right, let's look at some questions. RJ says, I appreciate you addressing the need to address problems on the right. Hopefully, maybe she'll do some articles about it. I think it's an important issue. We've done a couple of shows on the woke right, raising some questions and concerns. And, I think it's a fair thing to ask. I think this is an excellent point, Jessica says, about including at least a few far-right examples. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard, because you're thinking, well, do I even really see everything correctly? I need to have an amount of humility about myself that maybe my perception is off. And so Monique and I are constantly having conversations and just trying to be open to dialogue and discussion. So, these things are not always easy to discern. This is an interesting issue that Amanda is raising here. I think the issues with the Christian right, though, are detailed with many books by Dumas and the Holy Post. The Christian right gets a lot of critiques when the left only does so recently. And I think this is another very important point that people who like the book are bringing up, is that, look, there's constant critiques about our views, as more conservative, Bible-believing Christians. I mean, 2020 was a plethora, flurry of books critiquing us. And I wish that we had seen this much energy around some of those books by these same voices. And this is why many Christians who like Megan's book don't care about the critiques. They feel like somebody is finally speaking up for what they see and what they have felt. And they are weary and tired of constantly being in the crosshairs by the progressive adjacent Christians. And so they feel like they have been critiqued, they have been examined, and they're just glad somebody else is finally speaking up. So, all right. Elaine says, love your neighbor can be very manipulative. And I think that that's one of Megan's themes in the book, is she's trying to show, and I have made this point many, many times on this channel, that you cannot fly every progressive policy, or even every policy, progressive or conservative, under the banner of love your neighbor without proper biblical attestation. And we definitely need to have more conversation about that. But yes, Megan raises that. Laura says, I feel so minimized and gaslit with these issues when I talk to others about cultural issues. It's nice to feel validated. Exactly. That's exactly my point in many ways with this book. To use the language of the left, we feel confirmed by our lived experiences. I agree with you, Jessica.
That's funny for real.
And Monique says that's funny for real. Let's see. Stacy says, I don't really see mainstream Christianity drifting right. There are a group of them, but it's a small minority. For the most part, the Overton window seems to be drifting left. And I think that that's part of Megan's point. Yeah. Well, let's see. I think it is fair to ask, but also knowing what the right did to Candace Owens, the ask is a really huge one. It might cost her a lot. Yeah, I don't know what Candace is up to now. I still watch her podcast, trying to figure out her POV. I think I'm starting to figure it out. Okay, now in the second half of the stream, I kind of want to pick up the theme that I started there on that last point about the book, and talk about, and this is specifically, I want to talk to people who, and I don't know how many followers we have that will fall in this category, but maybe this will be something you can share with them. But I specifically want to talk to people that would call themselves and label themselves as never Trumpers or as progressives. Okay. So I want to talk to those people and maybe try to help. So I want to try to explain my theory about why it is that half the nation keeps voting for Trump. And I get it that for many of you who are never Trumpers or progressives, it's probably very confusing for you. Like, why do people, reasonable, rational people, my family, my coworkers, my friend group at church, why do they keep voting for someone who's an adulterer, who has been impeached twice, who's a convicted felon? Like, this probably makes no sense to you. And I get that. And I sincerely, and I'm not trying in any way to be a troll or anything, I sincerely hope that maybe I can help explain what a significant portion of the country is thinking. And maybe I'm being too optimistic here, but I want to try to help you have increased empathy for these people who are voting for Trump and to understand better of where they are coming from. Maybe it will make for more productive dialogues. Maybe it will increase your understanding and your sympathy and how you can love your Trump flag waving neighbor better. So I'm going to share my theory. This is an opinion. You can try it on. You might think I'm totally wrong. That's okay. Like I'm a big girl. I can live with that. But before we get into it, I want to offer a couple of caveats. I'm not here to defend Trump, his actions, or his policies. That's not what I'm talking about today. There are a lot of policies that I personally disagree with Trump on. I thought about doing another video about that, but I don't know if I'm going to do it. But I have a lot of disagreements with Trump policies. And I am a strong skeptic that Trump is a real Christian. I think a lot of his recent actions could reasonably be construed as pandering to evangelical voters. I see through his antics. I am not here to be an apologist for Trump or to defend him. And I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm going to vote. I hope you'll vote. But however the election turns out in November, it will be the will of God. And we will, as Christians, have to wrestle through that. No matter how it turns out, there's going to be hard feelings on either side. So, we can have that conversation. But those are my two caveats in getting into this. I simply want to offer my opinion about why people vote for Trump. And this is based on our interactions with people probably since around like 2020, 2021, and the many, many letters that we've received at the ministry, and share some thoughts with you about why it is that I think that reasonable people make a choice to vote for him. I think that Big picture. Here's my big picture. Trump has come to be symbolic for something bigger than the man himself. And unless you understand what Trump is symbolic for, you're going to have a very hard time understanding why people vote for him. Now, back in 2020 or in 2016, when he first ran, I did not vote for him. Thought he was a clown. I didn't think he could keep his promises. He made a lot of grandiose promises. I just didn't believe him. I thought he was a liar. 2020, I voted for him because he did keep his promise about the Supreme Court. And I know that that was a reason why many people voted for him. Many Christians voted for him back in 2020. I think we're in a little bit different situation now. And I think that there is a different reason why people vote for him. I think for many, Trump presents, let me try that again. I think for many, Trump represents hope. But hope in what exactly? I think that there is a significant group of people in our country, maybe 30 to 50% of the people in our country, who feel very discouraged. Many of these people have lost trust with institutions that have guided their lives. Events happened back in 2020 and 2021, and they lost something significant to them. And they are trying to rebuild their life from the ground up in at least one area. These are people that had a general trust in the government. The government told them to stay home and stop the spread. They did that. Many of them, in months that followed, lost their jobs or lost their small businesses, while they saw big box stores and liquor stores and abortion clinics be declared essential services. And those people were given special privileges to stay open. These same people, some of them, continued to trust the government. The government then told them there was no way that this virus was man-made. There was no way that it came from a lab leak. They were told to trust the science. A good number of these people even lined up to get vaxxed. And a significant number of them, I'm just going to get dinged because I just said the word. Oopsie. A significant number of, yeah, they got waxed. Yeah. And a significant number of them became sick as a result of the wax. Or they know someone who became very sick. All of a sudden, they saw cancer rates skyrocketing, heart attacks happening to young people. Their own health maybe was irreparably harmed. Or they knew someone who was just never the same after getting the thing. And then they saw the news reluctantly starting to report that the virus does, in fact, seem to have been man-made and may have been funded by our own military and may have been a version of a biological weapon. They felt lied to. They feel betrayed by their country, their government. They stopped trusting the news and they stopped trusting the science. Trust has been significantly broken for these people. During the same time, their pastor, in some cases, started telling them things like, that they had to repent of their whiteness. They started wondering, I thought the blood of Jesus was covering all my sins, and I never knew about this whiteness problem, and now I'm being told, I need to repent. And in the beginning, they tried to comply. They read the books. They went to the groups. They did the whole Be the Bridge thing. But the theology and the practice just became so unbiblical and confusing to them that many of them found themselves having to leave their churches because when they tried to bring the concerns to their pastor in a kind and biblical way, their concerns were not addressed. They were told there's not a problem, that they're just conspiracy theorists, and they had to leave and start over. These people are heartbroken. They had to stop trusting a person that had a significant role in their life as their pastor. Some are still trying to find a new church home. Many of these same people are hurting because they had to move to another state because their children became vulnerable to being transed. Others have adult children who no longer speak to them because they won't repent of their sin of whiteness. This is a mess. And now they see their government lying to them almost every day. They've seen their government lying to them and the news media being complicit with it and covering up, for example, the cognitive decline of the president. And then they saw him on the debate stage a few weeks ago, and they're like, what happened? The federal government is betraying me as the citizen, and they're confused and they're hurt, and they have been called dangerous, a threat to national security, deplorable, racist, and they've been told time and time again that they just believe in conspiracy theories, and yet they see that many things that were a conspiracy theory, if they waited 6 months, oh wait, there actually seems to be something to this. And now we're living in a cesspool of conspiracy theories. There's a sense in which going on Twitter is just nothing but a flurry of conspiracy theories because so much trust has been broken that these people don't know who to believe anymore. They're starting to question everything. They're exasperated and frustrated, and they don't know what to believe anymore. And they definitely do not trust politicians or rich elites or Hollywood elites. They're just not listening to it. And they, at some point, they stopped caring what people said about them. These people see elites as morally disgusting. People who are trying to destroy their way of life, their businesses, their schools, and their churches. And they have literally stopped caring what progressives and never Trumpers call them. They don't care. So when you talk to somebody and you feel like they're like unmoved by your pleas for sane discussion and winsome conversation, they literally feel like they have been pushed to the edge and they don't care anymore. For them, they are just trying to hold on to the last vestiges of what they see as their way of life and their culture. Many of these people are hurting and confused, and they feel deeply betrayed by their government, their pastor, their medical doctor, their family members. It's a lot of distrust and lost trust. And I think that in their hearts, they may not say it this way, but I think my theory is that what they feel is, I will not be duped again. They see their pastors and their congressmen's silence about the fact that schools want to trans their kids and put pornography in their middle school library and call their kids racist. They feel it in their heart about their pastor's silence, that their pastor doesn't acknowledge the challenges that these people face every day in having to use pronouns in the workplace or enduring DEI trainings and things that have impact on their daily lives. And they just look at their pastor and he's just silent about these things. He doesn't talk about it. But you know who is talking about it? Who they do hear talking about it is Trump. Trump is talking about the things that are impacting their everyday lives. the things that they truly care about, and they feel like their way of life is slipping away. And this is what I mean when I say Trump gives them hope. He symbolizes hope. And here's why. He is the one leader on the world stage who might care about their very real problems. These people see Trump as the last hope, standing between them and their worldview and their way of life being run over and crushed. Some of these people are just unconditional supporters of Trump. They're so over the moon for him that they don't see his flaws. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the many people who see Trump and all his flaws. They see his adultery, his crazy tweets, his spray on orange tan, his pandering to evangelicals. They see it. But on some level, they feel like they must look past it because they see Trump as the one man who hasn't been bought by the elites. He's earned his own money, and he isn't owned by the globalists. He is what, in their opinion, is standing between them and the policies of the World Economic Forum. Trump is the man who is standing between them and being invaded by the Chinese communists. Trump is standing between them and having the federal government be weaponized against them because they are pro-life or stand out in front of abortion clinics or having their nonprofits bank accounts investigated. They feel like Trump is the man who might put an end to the weaponization against Christians by the federal government. Now, I get it. Everything I've talked about might seem completely irrational to you. I'm trying in my own humble way, I may not succeed, to encourage you to see something maybe you possibly haven't seen before. And I want to encourage you to talk to Trump supporters, even if you're a never Trumper, even if you're a progressive, in your compassion for your fellow humans. Just ask them, what do you find appealing about him? What do they feel like is at stake in this election? Why do they keep voting for him? These are very provocative questions that could go to someone's heart and motive and difficulty. And you don't have to agree with them. You don't have to agree with their reasoning. But have you at least taken the time to try to understand them? Have you taken the time to try to understand your Trump supporting neighbor? Because we get blasted all the time as conservatives of everything that's wrong with us and everything that's wicked and vile about us. And we all know. But these people really are concerned about a two-tier justice system, as are many progressives. Maybe sit down and talk about what you see as the two tiers. I don't know. But until we really start having better conversations, we're going to just keep talking past each other. And until we kind of take some time to see each other's humanity and the loss that some of these people have experienced and lament with them about the loss of their children to trans ideology, or lament with them about the loss of their job because they refuse to cooperate with the lies of pronoun usage in the workplace. Lament with them about the loss of their church and their friends and their pastor and their loss of trust and maybe even in institutional Christianity. Many of these people who keep voting for Trump, they actually aren't crazy. They're in a lot of pain. And some of them have experienced significant loss the last few years. And if you disdain people who voted for Trump, my question is, have you really sat down to talk to them and try to understand their why, to love them and pray with them, and maybe even ask them the question I'm raising here is, what does Trump symbolize for you? So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I hope that maybe it'll give you some things to think about. And for those of you who are never Trumpers, or I could just totally strike out. It's nothing. That is okay. All right. Let me look through the comments here. I got to scroll back a ways. Boy, you guys were writing a lot. All right. Do you want to come over here and jump behind the camera? She wants to know if anyone wants to talk to her. A lot of thoughtful comments. Just reading through them. Kim says, I know many who have had adverse health issues right after the wax. It's very sad. Yeah. Yeah, people are. Laura says, you're covering this so truthfully and so much sensitivity. So much of what you say I've lived and seen others live. You know. Alexandra says, I'm skeptical of both political parties. I think we should all be to some degree. Yes and amen. And that's not the purpose of this conversation. Again, I'm not telling people who to vote for. I'm not telling who I'm voting for. I'm just trying to offer some insight and perspective on a particular group of voters. And yes, if you listen to the family meeting that Monique and I did last Thursday over at the Center for Biblical Unity, the best way to get all of our content is by downloading the CFBU app, because then you can see everything in one place. We talked a little bit about some of our concerns about the Republican Party and this very issue. Oh, I remember this. Remember when the White House told the unwaxed that they were going to kill their family over Christmas? I do remember that speech. I do remember it. Yeah. So I have a question. This is a sincere question that I'd like to ask someone on the thing, on the stream here. Naboth, very interesting name. The lesser of two evils is still evil. So these people who take this position, I genuinely want to know, what is your solution? Because these are the people that are up for, I mean, RFKJ is not exactly a Sunday school teacher either. So if you are against voting for somebody who has substandard moral character, which I can appreciate that position, do you not vote? Is that what you do? This is a sincere question. It's a good faith question. I don't understand this position, because these are the people that are available to us. So when people bring this up of the lesser of two evils is still evil, like, how do you work that out? Help me understand your position. Okay. Yeah, I get the idea of being an independent voter. That's great, but it still doesn't solve the conundrum of the options before us. If they're all wicked, if we're going to say they're all wicked people and we don't vote for wicked people, then how do we participate in the public square? This is my question. Write to me, info@centerforbiblicalunity.com. I sincerely want to know how people work this out, because I do not understand this position. yes, he calls himself the father of the wax. And this is an area where I totally disagree with Trump. Like I said, I have many disagreements with Trump, and this is one of them. Okay. Distrust goes both ways. I've seen educated people look down on uneducated people because educated people think the uneducated are simple-minded and just don't get it. Absolutely, I've seen that too. I've also seen uneducated people look down and dismiss educated people, as have I. Plenty of fault on both sides. I agree. I'm not talking about fault. I'm talking about, as a Christian, though, at some point we have to interrupt the back and forth. And I mean, this is what I did with Monique when she was stuck in critical race theory, is just continuing to have conversations with her of what is appealing to you about this issue. Why do you believe this way? Having the back and forth of well, what about and what about and what about, it ultimately usually doesn't help. At some point, I think, in my opinion, as a Christian, you have to be willing to step into that space and just start taking the hits. And you have to start just letting the person kind of vent and understand, okay, this person's in pain. How do I understand their pain? This was a large part of my journey with Monique out of critical race theory. If all I did was approach her intellectually, I don't think I would have ultimately been able to make much movement with her. At some point, I had to stand in there and just take the hits and her hard emotions. And I had to just listen, even when she was venting at me about something that I had nothing to do with, but saying, hey, help me understand what is appealing to you about being a progressive or believing in critical race theory. Even if the other person doesn't reciprocate, I still think we have a responsibility as a Christian in many situations to be good listeners. And you know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's how I see it. All right. Boy, there's a lot of comments. Okay. I will read through all the comments, but I don't want to just have you sit here watching me read the comments.
No, we're here for it. We're here for it.
Let's see. Jim says, Jim, who told me he's a never Trumper on Facebook, it does help because the world is watching how Christians behave. If Trump lost the support of evangelicals because of their behavior, that would send a powerful message to preserve our witness. Okay, so I'm interpreting that to mean that you just don't participate in voting. That is how you feel like is the moral high ground in this election. I'm assuming that. I'm reading it into it. You didn't say that directly, but to me, that's the outcome. If I'm wrong, you can put it in the chat. Let's see. If you don't vote for the best of the evils, you are acquiescing to the worst of the evils. Well, I think that's the argument on the other side of what Jim is saying. Sherry, it's an interesting comment. How do you justify being a never Trumper and voting for Biden? I don't think all never Trumpers do vote for Biden. So I think that's an assumption that you're making. So I would clarify that first. His personal life and policies are vehemently anti-Christian. I would say the same for Trump on some level. I think you have to, as a Christian, call balls and strikes and see things impartially. We've been fighting tooth and nail at local school board meetings about transgender mandates and inappropriate library books in a red state for 4 years. And I think that having those conversations on the local level, super important. Keep it up. But also, the whole national thing is a tough issue. This is a good comment. Joy says they've all been substandard and moral behavior. They all have substandard and moral behavior. I vote and I pray. And as a church, we need to disciple. It's not the government's job to be the moral authority of our nation. Yes and amen. That is a great comment. We need to get clear on that. All right. Jim is the never Trumper is responding. I will participate in other races, just not vote for president. Okay. So you opt out of voting for the president. All right. That's, I appreciate the clarity. But doesn't the Bible teach us that God established world authorities? Absolutely. It absolutely teaches that. And we live in a situation and a very unique moment in history where we, as a regular citizen, get to participate in the government. That's not usually the case. The default, the norm is just getting conquered and being run by tyrants. I mean, that's how it's been for most of human history. The exception has been in the West and particularly in our country. So it's a privilege to be able to participate in the government as a regular citizen. I don't think the Bible addresses that, but ultimately, yes, all world kings and presidents and authorities are put there by God. And that's why I said at the beginning of the stream, Jim, I don't know if you were here, but I made that point very clearly, that whoever wins in the fall is ultimately going to be the will of God. And we'll have to struggle through that as Christians. All right. Elaine. So voting in tyrants just adds a step. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think there have been governments that are people who have been voted into office that are socialists and communists. And so they think like, oh, we were voted in as a democracy. And then, you know, that country doesn't do any very well. And then the people try to take it back. So, yeah. All right. This is a thoughtful question. Carol Ann says, the things I've learned in this year and a half on social media about the cutthroat nature of Christian culture have been deeply disappointing. It's heartbreaking, really. I agree. I mean, I don't think we always treat each other well. And that's why I wanted to try to do this stream about encouraging each other to be better listeners. I find it profoundly unhelpful when people just tell us, oh, we should be unified and we should listen better, but they don't offer any practicals of how to do that. So, you know, in my meager effort today, I'm offering is, you know, maybe this will be a way of helping one group have more sympathy about another group that is often vilified. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. That is all. Thanks for being here. I got to get back to work. The dissertation is not going to write itself, unfortunately. So thank you very much. Take care. I look forward to your feedback.